will call the Ames District Board special meeting, 2 p.m., June 3rd, 2025, meeting to order. We have a brief agenda, and I would like to entertain a motion to approve as prepared.
I so approved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Great. We have one primary board action item for today. We have the declaration of a board vacancy. As we are aware, we lost our friend, colleague, and trustee John Haefeli on May 31st. John impacted the college and community in so many ways, too numerous to mention. But during his tenure as a trustee, he made a lasting impact with his leadership, passion, and commitment to the students, the college, and the whole community. John will be missed. As part of this, we will declare a vacancy. Jerry, will you please read the resolution?
Yes, thank you, Chair Schock. Title, Resolution of the Board of Trustees of Ames College District declaring a vacancy for Ames Trustee District E. Whereas on November 7th, 2023, Trustee John W. Haefeli was elected to the Board of Trustees of the Ames College District for Trustee District E. Whereas Trustee Haefeli passed away on May 31st, 2025, creating a vacancy. Whereas the board will fill the vacancy within the statutory 60-day time period. And whereas the person appointed to fill this vacant position will serve until the regular biennial election on November 4th, 2025. Now therefore, be it resolved that the board hereby declares that a vacancy exists for Ames Trustee District E.
Thank you, Jerry. Could I have a motion to approve the declaration as recorded?
I so move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All of us in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Jerry, for moving us through on that. We'll move into a discussion.
Chair
on
Schock,
yes.
sorry to interrupt.
I just have a clarification question that we were talking about before, but now I'm reading this differently. The person appointed to fill this vacant position will serve until the regular biennial election on November 4th. So whoever's appointed will serve until that time. Then they run, let's say they are elected.
Correct.
The way I read this, then they start their own term
Correct. So
as opposed to finishing off a 2-year term.
no.
No.
No, so I definitely see where you're coming from with the wording, but essentially what this resolution is saying is whoever's appointed is only to be in this seat as appointed until a person is duly elected during this November election. That person could be the person appointed, it could be someone else. Whoever that is that's elected is then elected to the seat. This
For a 2-year to
Correct.
conclude.
That piece doesn't have to be in the resolution because this resolution is just a declaration. All
Okay.
of that information is on the paperwork for the election. For when the folks come to get their packets for petitions, it'll be specific within there. And once those materials are updated, I will update them on the website as well so that folks know if they're running for District E, it's a 2-year term.
Okay.
So all of that will be
Okay.
on the website once I
Thank
get
you.
it turned around and
Okay.
updated. Yep.
Super.
Oh, got it.
So they know they're running for a 2-year term.
Correct.
4-year.
Then if they want to run again after that 2-year term, they can, and they would get their first 4-year
It will be a
term.
full 4-year term.
Then we have to investigate to see if they then are eligible for a second 4-year term.
That is correct. Yeah,
Okay.
we will need to dig deeper into that to see
Okay.
when we get to that point, but for what we have to know now, yes.
Yes, okay, super.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Thank you, Chair Schock. Sorry for that interruption.
No, thank you for the clarification. I went through that as well, so I appreciate you bringing that forward. So thank you. Okay. In order to determine our process to fill the vacancy, there's several options. In our policy, Jerry will give us an overview of what that policy gives us kind of the leeway to do. And then Following that, I've asked Dr. Bornstein as well as Jerry to review some options for us. And so, Jerry, if you want to go ahead with the policy piece.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Schock. So the policy being referenced is policy 13. I know all of us who are in the meeting right now have copies of it, but it's also available on the website for folks to look at as well. The first portion of the policy really just describes what it means to have a vacancy, which we've already covered so far with the board's action today. So now in the second piece of the policy, it goes into what is prescribed by law, by state statute, for the next steps of filling that vacancy and what that looks like. Part one of that section, it states, and I'll just kind of read a piece of it here and then summarize. At the next meeting of the board, immediately following the occurrence of a vacancy, the board will adopt a resolution to declare that, which again happened in the previous action item. By taking that action, it starts a 60-day clock that the board has to fill that vacancy by law. So 60 days from today is the deadline for the board to take action to fill the vacancy. Once that person is appointed through whatever process the board decides, they will be sworn in and then be an official member until the results of this November's election. It then goes into greater detail in part two here of timelines, where the vacancy falls on the calendar in relation to the upcoming election and what that means for how long this person is appointed. Based on the timing of this vacancy, it's more than the requirement prior to the election that essentially requires that this person only serves until the November election. Hopefully that makes sense, but because of that requirement, that's why this person is only going to be appointed to fulfill through November and not the whole rest of the previous term. And then part three, it really just kind of ties up the loose ends left by parts 1 and 2 and isn't really necessarily relevant to what we'll be deciding here today. So really, as far as state statute is concerned and our policy is concerned, that's really what it lays out, is that the board now has 60 days to fill this vacancy. And kind of the timing in relation to the election, how long this person is going to be appointed to. There are no specifics in state statute or in policy as far as what the specific procedure needs to look like that the board needs to take. And so that's really what this discussion will kind of be about this afternoon from the board, is the board coming to consensus and directing staff on how to move forward with the specifics of how you all would like to fill this vacancy. So with that, it just kind of as what made it easier for me to kind of think about what this looks like is it's really kind of a spectrum, kind of a continuum of what these options can look like, because there are no specifics within policy. So I think that's hopefully helpful to kind of frame this as we go forward in these options, is that it's really a continuum of how much time and specifics that you want to go into to fill the
So
vacancy.
there's no written steps that need to take place. We are actually kind of deciding what we're going to do.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
There are no statutes or policies that would tie the board's hands in any one way or the other. We've already met those requirements so far. And then as long as the board appoints somebody within 60 days, you've met that requirement as well.
And it says also in the policy, it says if the vacancy cannot be filled, it will remain vacant. Is not that we would like that, but I mean, we're not in any legal position that we have to have it filled.
Correct. Okay, correct.
No one step forward, in other words.
Right, yeah,
So
that's what I
we're-
mean.
Or if the board appoints and the person refuses, the
Right.
board appoints and the person refuses.
Right.
You know.
I just wanted to make sure that we don't have that other pressure if it's by state statute, whatever.
And there is a piece kind of on that same line.
Oh.
In part 1, that kind of outlines that if within that 60-day period, the board cannot decide,
Mhm.
then the board chair or board president, as it's referred to in policy, the board chair can make the appointment unilaterally.
Okay.
So that's kind of the backup piece to that. But again, it goes to what Dr. B just said, that that's only part of it. If the person doesn't accept the appointment, right, that could still lead to the point where it just goes unfilled until November.
It says here, the board cannot make, if the appointment is not made by the board within 60 days, the board president. Okay, so that would be.
Yep. Yep.
Ms. Marilyn.
Yes.
And sometimes that occurs when the board can't agree.
Right,
Exactly.
I can see that.
Right, I was gonna say, I mean,
To appoint.
you could have a big open process, but
Yeah.
if we can't agree on
Yeah.
a candidate.
And then if it's approaching 60 days or it's 60 days, then the president of the board makes the decision. Okay.
Correct.
So, oh, Marilyn's talking.
Oh, Marilyn, you're
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Thank you. My apologies. So ultimately, as a board, we'll determine the process that we want to take to move forward today.
So if you want me to jump in, there
Sure.
really, as Jerry mentioned, there's a range that you could consider from today, having a conversation, identifying a name and directly appointing them. Boom. All the way through to what tends to be best practices, which is we, us. We would make an announcement announcing the vacancy, suggesting letters of interest. The board or a couple members of the board would come together to review the letters of interest, select a couple people that either the full board or a couple members of the board would want to interview, select from those folks from the interviews. So basically it's like you're hiring somebody.
Right.
And then making the offer and the appointment at that point, and then that person would start. Under what I would say normal circumstances, I think 60 days is enough time to do that. Something that you also want to consider, and that's why I say normal circumstances, we might not be in normal circumstances. So one of the topics that you all want to consider is, do you want this person who you're going to appoint to be part of the second day of the board retreat that we canceled, which more than likely needs to occur before the August board meeting? And when we look at that, we're looking in July at probably either the second week of July or like July 22nd, depending upon all of your schedules and other schedules.
And I've heard back, sorry to
Yes.
interrupt, but I've heard back from Cindy, our proposed facilitator. And those dates and times do not work for her schedule because she is previously engaged with other folks as well. So her next availability is not until August.
Oh,
So based on
okay.
the schedules that we know of so
Okay,
far.
because when I talked to her, she said, okay.
Yeah.
So we need to find out if, so regardless, because we can
Yep.
have someone else facilitate. Do we want this person that you appoint to be part of day 2 of the retreat? Which again, if we look at our needs as a college and as a board, do you want that to occur before the August board meeting? If so, then the process that you discussed to fill this vacancy might need to be truncated a bit from that full piece on the other end of the scale. All of it is good. All of it is appropriate. All of it is legal. All of it, it's just what you want to do. And so anywhere in between.
And I would say just to add to that, because I think that's perfect. I think my experience with vacancies at the city and city council, which has a similar rules and procedures surrounding them as far as appointing folks when there are vacancies and things, and at school boards around as well. The way that we had done it is similar to that best practice, of course, making tweaks that worked for our schedule as well, but shortening the process and, still posting that there was a vacancy, asking for letters of intent for a couple of weeks, and then going through with interviews at a work session with the city council, and then going through with a private ballot at a city council meeting to go through that. So there's different versions of that. And then there are different versions of shorter, more truncated versions as well. So just that there are lots of options, I guess, for the board to consider in that continuum.
What I would also say, with regard to that continuing for your consideration is a process has already sort of been started to prep for this fall election. So it's not like, a process isn't or hasn't been occurring. So no matter what you decide, there is a process moving along. So, Marilyn has suggested names for consideration for fall election. John has, Janine has, as did Jean. Jerry and I have reached out to names over the last couple of months and have met with people. And so far of all of those names, there's one person that is interested in considering this. So that.
But I think that would be for considering for the fall. I mean, as far as the election cycle.
Yes, however, it doesn't preclude you from appointing that person until the fall and that person goes through the election cycle. What I'm stating here is twofold. One is that a process has already been in place. So if you want to jump on that process to continue it, that's fine. If you don't want to, that's fine.
Right.
And because through that, there has been one person expressing interest, that could be someone that you consider appointing, even through this process, even if you ask for more interest letters, you could consider appointing that person, and that person would still be running in November.
Right.
So that doesn't preclude you from doing that.
Right, it just kind of is an illustration of
Yes.
the two ends of the continuum, right?
Yeah.
That would
You
be.
have a really short
That would
piece
be the
where you
one
would
end.
appoint, yeah.
That would be the one end of the continuum, and then what we talked about first is kind of the other end, determining how long you want that process to be. It doesn't have to be 60 days. It could be 30 or 45 days of a process to go through, but that's
It could
kind
be
of,
less.
it could be less. It's just, those are the kind of the two ends of the
When
process.
does the election process start? Like, when does Marilyn have to get her paperwork and start getting names and everything?
So all candidates, and I can pull it up here, just so I give you the right dates. I don't wanna give you the incorrect ones.
6th.
Yes, August 6th, I believe, is the date, the first date that packets can go out for circulation for signatures.
Okay,
And August the 29th is the last day for them to be turned in. And so,
but they can be picked up before August 6th, right?
correct,
And you
Marilyn,
can't do anything until.
correct, Marilyn has already received hers. All the materials are there. Nothing can be circulated until that point. And anybody between now and then, I mean, this has been posted, as far as for the election, all that information has been posted on the website since March, around spring break time. So if folks have seen that and are interested in that, they could have come by between now and then
Right.
to receive that information.
They just can't start to get the
You just
signatures.
can't circulate it until that August time
And
period.
my question is, do they have to come to you to get the paperwork, or can they just download everything and you don't know?
They have to come to the office, because those packets are stapled together to ensure that they aren't separated
Right,
and
I remember that.
nothing crazy going on with them. So they have to come in physically to receive them because I have them printed out and secured. And that way I know they were received, secured. And so if I get them back and they've been manipulated, I know to not count them.
So,
I know when it's gone forward.
So I think we're talking election, right?
Right.
Election cycle. There has been some expressed interest over those running.
Right.
For today, we have to figure out, it sounds like there is somebody who is interested in running. We have what was labeled as best practice, where we post for a letter of interest and we go through a process where this person could also put into.
Correct.
The short end is you can appoint, or the long end is we would go through the process of posting, accepting the interest, some interviews, and then appointing from that.
Correct.
So, in my mind, one of the things we need to consider is one, transparency, and openness, right? And so I guess, even though I know the person very well that, is expressed an interest, I would say opening it to the public is really important for public relations and also being inclusive and all of that. So it's not just a PR move, it really is about, being inclusive and open and so that we would do, just to get the kind of that ball rolling, some kind of an open time. But for sake of having perhaps someone be able to attend this new date, perhaps something that then is manageable to think about if we're gonna do a, July part 2 of our retreat, then we would wanna get this done fairly soon in June. No guarantee that whoever it is could attend, right? But at least they'd be invited to attend.
Right.
Maybe we don't know schedules of, who would be interested. But, as opposed to doing a 60-day, it's open.
Right.
Doing a shorter where, we do have something publicly in the paper or wherever makes sense to have a public notice.
And I think just to kind of help clarify that a little bit, just for the group as far as decisions. I think that's the first decision that needs to be made is if that's where the board would like to go as far as announcing and opening up for letters and that sort of thing. Because if we decide that, then the board needs to talk through a timeline.
Mhm.
If you decide you don't want to do that, then there are other things to consider too. So I think maybe that's the first piece that
Yeah.
the group should
Let's look at the timeline.
Yeah.
decide. is-
I'd like to hear from Heidi on, with Janine's recommendation as well.
Well, it's the first time I've been in a board where we have to complete a vacancy or
Yeah.
fill it. The easy route would be to have this person that people know that has expressed an interest to appoint. That's easy on everyone. But at the second piece, if you look at it, makes sense that you want to be transparent. So people don't think you're hiding anything or that kind of makes sense. But I think the way that you would do that is through the timeline. That makes sense. And then also we would need to make sure, I'm just thinking the process. The timeline, you would have to make sure it's out there, the announcements that you would have to.
Well, I think if we want to go down that, I want to clarify, I just want to get kind of to Jerry's point, the process that we want to take. If we are in agreement to move forward with a posting with receipt of letters of interest, then we can put together our timeline. There's no statute or anything that says has to be done here, but we have the 60 days. Ideally, it'd be great for the person to be at the retreat. But if not,
It's not the end of the
there's
world.
3 months. That's basically the coverage will be the August, September, October, November timeline. So, until the new election. And so I think, we just need to decide if that's the way we want to go. Personally, I think I like the idea of, posting and putting it out for letters of interest as well. And then determine, on who that person would be. I'm in agreement with you, Janine.
I guess I'm confused. So we post this vacancy and is the goal to have them start in August? Or is it the goal to have them start anywhere between August, October?
It would be immediate.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
It's some work and it's definitely a tight time frame.
Yeah, because 60 days from today is August 3rd,
Right, because you have to do 60 days.
because you have to do 60 days,
right, it would have to be done within,
within 60 days,
right,
before August 3rd.
there you go. It could be done shorter,
Otherwise, it falls back of appointment.
correct?
Or remains unfilled.
or remains unfilled.
So it has to be filled by August 2nd? Is that correct?
Correct.
Sure.
I mean, yeah,
Give a day, Patty.
yes.
Well, there's
Well,
30
and the
days in
second
June
is
and
a-
31st of July.
And the
Oh,
second is a Saturday, so it would
So,
really be the first.
August
Friday,
1st.
August the first would kind of be the deadline of filling it statutorily. However, just I guess to kind of move that piece along, just to give an idea, just looking at the calendar. If it were posted, as if, for instance, if that's what the board is wanting to move forward with, you could set a deadline for application, or not application, letters for mid-June. You know, that way
I
they,
wouldn't do more than 2 weeks.
right, I mean,
Right.
that's what I'm saying, like, it would be, I mean, that would be 2 weeks as far as the week of the 16th, somewhere in that week.
16th.
And Jerry, just as clarification, we're talking that a person could write a letter that just, or an email that says, I am interested in being considered.
Well, yes, and I think that's another thing.
Right.
Again, if this is the direction the board's wanting to go, that's something we can discuss today of what you expect to receive from that person. If you,
Okay.
I think
Right.
the standard is a letter of interest, which can be as simple as I'm interested in this appointment. And they could write a whole long letter to you.
5 pages
Or
or
whatever they want you to consider.
Right.
Right.
Unless you specify what you would
Right.
want them to.
Right, okay,
Again, think of it as you're hiring an employee.
right,
Even though this person is not an employee, but when you are going to be looking at their letters of interest,
Mhm.
if you receive an email with one line saying I'm interested versus
Right.
a letter that's maybe a page of why they're interested and they're
Right.
passionate about education, which one are you going to want
Right.
to interview?
Yeah, they would hold equal weight as far as showing their interest, but that clearly would say something to the board about who they would want to
Right.
appoint.
Right. Well, who they would want to interview.
Correct, yes.
If you're gonna go
Right.
through the whole process, not that saying that you would, you could very well take letters of interest, read them, and select from there who you want to appoint
That's
So-
true.
and end the process.
That would be a
So
process.
then so this person supposedly that some people know that's interested, I don't know them. And
Exactly.
so then if that person wrote one sentence that said, I'm interested, and this other person wrote a whole big paragraph, then I may not decide on this other person, but look at this
That's
other
correct.
person. So my other question would be, is that really fair to just say a letter of interest? Or do you say a letter of interest with your background? You know what I mean? Do you write specifically?
Why are you interested?
Why are you
Or just
interested?
answering these 3
And
questions.
so I
please.
can look at apples to apples versus apples to bananas.
And that's what Jerry was saying is, if this is the first step of the process,
And what do we want?
what do you want them to do?
And just as food for thought here, for that direction, in the couple of instances I've been involved in other places, they chose pretty similar paths, and it was pretty generic as far as what they requested from the folks who were to show their interest,
Mhm.
but that's why there was an interview process.
Right,
So that they were all asked the same questions by the
Exactly.
board, and you could all meet them, and you weren't making a decision based on one sentence versus a
Okay.
letter.
And-
Or you can ask for some more specific information and choose to forego that process.
I-
So
I would suggest that you ask for more specific information,
I would too.
because in the prior.
Yes,
Well, that means you have to interview everyone.
Right.
which is
Agreed.
what that board chose that
Chose
they
to
wanted to do.
Yeah, okay.
And so,
Yeah, because I'm like, how would I decide?
and that's, I mean, that's why I feel that even though I think this person that I know would make a great board member and expressed an interest, there may be someone that's there that sees this and they've been thinking about this. And so I think, and if I were that other person, I want
The opportunity.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think so. But even if I were the person that was known,
Mhm.
I would want to know that Ames is going to get the right person.
Sure.
Yeah.
So do we need to decide like on criteria of the questions we ask or limit them to one page or, you know what I mean?
I think, yeah, right. First is, do we all agree that?
exactly. Is
Right.
that, do we want to go through the process for the appointment, including letters of interest, review, interviews, and then appointment?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we don't have any
Like, I
candidates,
personally-
you know, maybe nobody comes forward.
I
and
personally
then we have
don't.
to go from there.
I mean, I personally
May.
don't. I mean, I'm just being lazy. But especially because I'm thinking it's up till, but then you have this person on the board from August, September, October. So it is quite important.
November.
And
Yeah.
until swearing in December, really. I mean,
So we
the
do
person
need to
is-
take it seriously.
Yeah.
And I would say, just as an example of one that I pulled from a recent school board, so the Johnstown Milliken School Board had a vacancy within the last couple of years. So a version of their notice asked for the people who are interested to submit a letter, including a biographical statement. That's all they asked for, I think, because they were intending on going through an interview process. But if that can be a jumping off point of biographical information and why you're interested in serving. And, you know, that, it could be as easy as that. It could be more detailed, whatever other information you'd want them to submit. So,
So I do want to close the one piece of business, if we're going to go down into the planning, that we do agree that we want to go through the process instead of appointing.
I would think it'd be better for the board to go through the process,
Or a process.
the process.
Yeah.
Yes,
We can determine timing and what we want to include on that next.
do we need that in a motion?
No,
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 this is
okay.
just, I'm taking
Okay.
notes to know
Great.
kind of where we're landing, and I'll circle back at the end to make sure I
Okay.
got it correct. But-
Super.
this is all discussion.
Yeah, this
So-
is great.
Yep.
So we.
So if we're going to go through the process, the first is the notice for applications and to post for how long? We talked 10 days, 2 weeks. I know it's a quick turnaround, but we have a quick turnaround. So whether it's a 10-day or 12-day, so 2 weekends get in there, is what I would see. And then as they're coming in, we can review those. So we're not like all of them at once.
Yep.
Determine who we want to interview, go ahead and already get our schedules ready for those interviews.
Yep.
And then get the interviews rolling and get done. And then we would have that process. So if we did like a 12-day and then tried to interview like a week later, that's a pretty fast turnaround. That's all within, and I know the Stampede is in there, so we're gonna have to look at that calendar. But I do think it's doable if we stay true to that. And then I think, you know, we can determine how many people we want to interview. I mean, I'm hoping that we have a lot of interest.
And Chair Schock, just to jump in, I'm kind of taking it one step at a time as far as the timing, to not get too far ahead, but just thinking about what you're saying, roughly 10 or 12 days, get a couple weekends. If we had them do by midnight on the 15th, or I guess first thing in the morning on the 16th, Monday, the 16th of June, that would give 12 or 13 days. It would give 2 weekends. And so it wouldn't quite be 2 full weeks, but it would be 10 to 12 days. And then that would
be good.
then it would determine, or it would need to be determined by the board, how long you want to sit with those before we schedule interviews for those, you know, when you would want to do those. Because the week after that is the last week of June, and then we're into the 4th of July.
Well, in one step, we have to, so if we're pretending this is a hiring process, right?
Yep.
So the letters, even if the letters go out to board as we receive them, the board needs to schedule sometime probably on the 16th. It could be a Zoom, it could be an hour, just to talk about, okay, who do we want to interview from this
Yeah,
pile?
I would say just yeah,
So the 16th or 17th, we need a Zoom meeting with the board.
I would say then we run into the issue of, I don't want to call it an issue, then we run into open meeting law.
Well, it would
and
have
it
to
would
be
need to be-
executive session.
It doesn't fall under executive session because
We
it's
can
not
have a lawyer there.
Yeah, yes, but that is not an excuse for just having one there.
so it would be a special meeting.
Legal advice, yeah, on who to.
So you're saying, you're Marilyn, you're saying a special meeting?
Either a special meeting or they could all be emailed out. You can pick who it is. They come back to Jerry. The top 2 or 3 is who we interview.
That's true.
And then it's kind of a blind ballot for us as well to say, who am I interested in that candidate?
Yeah, I mean, we could do I could put together a ranking sheet sort of thing that each person
Okay.
could fill out and submit
That'd
back.
be nice.
Yeah.
Your top three.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's,
And do
I like
those.
that idea,
Yep, yep,
Marilyn.
okay.
That's great.
Yeah,
Then there's no extra special meeting.
yeah, or executive
then we
session.
wouldn't have to have a special meeting,
Right.
And how
and
long,
it would be objective of our scoring.
Yes,
Mhm.
it totally would.
and
Yeah.
as the board, how long would you want to take for that process, right? Because they're having until the 16th to get them to me. They may turn them in early and I can send them out early, but
I
How
think
long
the
do you-
23rd. I think we try to move it, guys, if we can.
I actually think that's
I think that's
too long.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I think by the end of that week, I mean, by the 19th,
That'd be
I'd be
great.
good with that.
The 19th is John's
Oh.
Yeah, we can't do the 19th.
service.
so by the 18th, yeah.
20th or 18th.
yeah, by the 18th, would that work?
If they're due by the 16th, yeah.
Well, maybe have them do
The
by midnight, the
18th that we have
15th.
it back to you.
Sure,
Is that correct?
correct. So,
The 18th is we'd have our scoring back to you.
correct, so that I could go through and determine which ones
Yeah.
were, filtered to the top and then
We can schedule for like the following week or the week of the 7th or something.
I'd say the following week.
Yeah, I would like to get it done before, why it's still kind of on our
The 4th, okay.
minds.
So if Jerry, if you put a date of the letters of interest need to be to you by midnight on the 15th. The first thing in the morning on the 16th, you send out whatever remaining
Yep.
ones.
Exactly.
And then then the board has until
8 AM on the 18th.
8 AM
first
on the
thing.
18th. So it's basically 48 hours to review, and then you'll be able to compile. And then we just need to identify some blocks of time for interviews.
Right.
And I know this is gonna be picky, but do you wanna do Zoom interviews? You wanna do in-person interviews? Do you want the whole board there? Is it okay if parts of the board there?
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's the.
And if
that's
it's
the
the
next
whole
piece.
board, does that mean it's a board meeting? Is that how that works?
Yes,
And anyone can join?
yeah,
Okay.
I mean, we would,
Right.
depending on what you would decide, if you decided in person, it would be open to the public to join in person
matter
or
what.
on Zoom or however.
Yeah. No matter
And if only one person applies, and
you
we
still
have one
would,
person.
but you still would wanna
Still
meet
wanna
that because you
meet
don't have to appoint that one person.
That's true.
You do not have to appoint that person if
That's
you do not
right.
like that one person.
Well, my other question too is I would think you want to do it as quick as possible and then appoint that person so they don't get to change their mind.
Oh, each.
Just saying.
This is also a public meeting right now.
Well, I think we'd like to have.
Yeah,
those-
Chuck D and Zach just got a real laugh on that.
That's right. Again, yes, I
I
think
don't-
you're
I
right,
mean,
though, I think.
You would like to have it settled and,
Yes, yes.
continue and be ready to go for the new year is what I'm thinking. So.
Yes. So, okay, I guess another thought of kind of to hammer out for the board. So we're at the point where we've determined the list of folks you want to interview. Those folks are being invited in the week of the 23rd. Is that what I'm-
Zoomed, whichever.
Right, I guess invited in either which way.
Right.
It is decided, but invited to interview on the week of the 23rd. I just want to make sure that I have the correct dates down.
Yes.
For myself.
And I would just suggest when we're talking semantics, for us, we're talking interview, but when we talk to the candidates, it's meet the board.
Yes, right.
And, it's over a lunch, it's over a coffee, it's meet the board. And, because it's not
Interview.
really an interview.
Yeah.
We're using that language, and I
Yes.
think I said that, but.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I mean, it could be if the board wanted to do that, it again is up to the board. On the ones that I've been on in the past, it was more of an interview of asking actual questions, and if the board wants to do that, you can, but
Yeah.
it can look that way as well. It can
Yes,
be-
but it's a different vibe.
Yeah.
Sure.
Of course, you're gonna ask questions, and they're gonna
Right.
ask questions of you.
It's a discussion.
But this
kind
is,
of,
yeah,
as
this
opposed
is
to
to me, I
conversation.
guess, and then maybe this is just me. This is a service board. And you're meeting each other to see about fit.
Right.
and if they're passionate and their heads and their hearts are in the right place for Ames, right? So that it's just that, right?
The timeline sounds good. Jerry?
I can tell you that the only thing I can't change is the 23rd.
It's gonna be a tough week for me. I'm gonna have to work on it.
And I
I
mean,
was-
as far as for postings and those sorts of
Right.
things, as long as we have some general timelines for folks to understand, I think that's great. I think we would need to hammer out as soon as possible specific time.
Okay,
I don't think we necessarily have to have specific times for interviews for that week, as long as we know what they're gonna be that week, right?
Right.
For now.
For right now, today, within the next day or two,
We need to
need to
tell you our
know
availability.
sometimes.
We need to tell you our availability.
Correct.
Right.
Yes, we need to know those as soon as possible.
And for me, I'm assuming I'm gonna be in these meetings with the board and the president, because I'll be working with them
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
I will need, if it's that week, I'll need to zoom in.
Oh, I'm
Because
not
I'm,
gonna be here.
yeah, I'll be on vacation,
Gi-
but I will zoom in.
Given that, if we don't know who's going to do it and their
prefer Zoom.
availability, maybe if we do it completely virtual, completely on Zoom. That way it's,
It's consistent for every candidate.
Yes.
sure, I mean,
I-
that's just food for thought for the board. I don't think that there's one good way or the other. I'm just saying that's an option if you wanted to do that.
yeah. I'm gonna also propose if we might have to leak into that beginning, the 30th, 1st or 2nd of July.
Sure.
But we can firm up dates. We can get dates to you, Jerry.
Yep.
Because we also have Jean,
For
who
those
we
2
need to make
weeks.
sure we include as well.
So if you could collect those 2 weeks probably, right?
Yeah,
I will.
So then if to use your language, Marilyn, if we're leaking into the 30th and the 1st, the ideal would be to make an appointment by July 3rd or July 7th would be the,
July 7th would be ideal.
So the week of the 7th would be or
The
the
day.
7th.
the 7th
Cool.
to make an appointment.
Yep.
Marilyn, do you think we will receive a lot of interest?
I have no idea. I hope so. There are many passionate people around Ames and, it's a great way to dip their toe in and, experience what the board is. So I'm hopeful. I don't think I'll know. I don't know that any one of us will until we see what comes in.
And as far, just a clarifying question for one piece of this, just for myself as we kind of move down the list. I guess we've shorthanded calling it the interview, but it doesn't have to look that way, but just to make it more efficient, for the interview time, is there a preference from the board on how you want that to look? Because it is a public, because all of the board will be there, it will be technically a public meeting that we're going to post. So is it going to look more like an open forum when we're hiring a vice president? Because I wouldn't recommend that. Or is it going to look like a meeting? Because if it's going to look like a meeting, then we would need to have prepared questions for these folks. Otherwise it would, so at that point, it feels more like an interview, but they don't have to be interview style questions necessarily. I don't know. I guess I'm trying to envision what that looks
Right,
like.
Yeah, so in my experience elsewhere with these, it's not an open meeting. It's the current board's time with potential board members. It's not for anybody else to. So it's more like a board meeting, but it's not a board meeting in that the board is meeting, so it will be posted. Yes, the board should have a couple questions that are consistent with everybody. But I guess what I would recommend is that it's not set up like the board is sitting on that side and someone's sitting on this
Correct.
side, so it feels like an
Right.
interview.
Correct.
It should be over coffee, over lunch, over something with the board interact now, because if there's more than, there's 3 or more there, board members, then yes, it is posted and there may be other people in the audience watching you have coffee.
Right.
Which is sometimes a little weird, but that's okay. But this is about the board.
Oh, no, correct.
Yeah. And that's why it's sort of, it's a conversation, so you can certainly have pre-prepared questions that are a conversation. So, yay, thanks so much for being here, we're so excited, you know, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then they do, and then Heidi, you may say, hey, that was interesting, you know, tell us more about that, and then they may say, well, why did you get involved in the board, and da, 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 da. So it's more free flowing, but we're prepared. And then the time is up and we say, thank you so much for your time, and then they go. So that kind of feel.
Yep. I guess where I'm hung up in my head is trying to envision how that works for a hybrid process. Because if you're gonna be joining on Zoom and you're the only one who's gonna be on Zoom, I don't want that to be I wanna make sure that it's a useful time for you as well. And so
Sure.
so I'm imagining that being hard to do when people are mingling in a room and you're the only one on a Zoom camera.
So, okay, let's imagine we're in here.
Sure.
We're not mingling.
Yep.
We're around the table. Marilyn's right there.
Yep.
Pretend that's me.
Yep. Yep.
I'm fine jumping in.
Sure.
Marilyn's fine jumping in.
Yeah.
Everybody's fine jumping in, and we can
That-
still create that vibe
That helps.
there.
That helps it
Yeah.
for me.
Well, and then I'm wondering, can we all select a question that we would all like to ask that person? So then it's the same question that's asked for all candidates, you know, and then the conversation still bounces back. So then there's some consistency that we're asking each candidate.
Yes.
Yes.
We absolutely need consistency.
And-
Absolutely.
And I don't know is that something that we submit to you by,
Yeah, I
You
think
know.
it's,
Right.
as long as it's prior to the interview, that would be time to.
Right.
I think we have to also be prepared that it being summertime, the person could be on vacation
Right.
It could be.
and they might
But-
need to Zoom in.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's
Right,
absolutely
exactly.
true.
And so we would need to, you know, again, there's a sense of casualness and,
So here's a suggestion from those silent people in the audience. Tea with BOT.
oh, that's a great idea.
And that could be sort of what the vibe
Right.
is, as we have, the board
I like
has
that idea.
tea with BOT.
I like it. Yeah. And would these people come in individually or all of them? Who, you know, if there are multiple.
Individually.
I just, yeah, because I've seen it done both
Both
ways and
Yeah. I think when they all come in, it's more of an open forum.
Yes.
I think this is a individual allowing kind of the didactic dialogue, because they're also interviewing as well a little bit to
Yes.
see if that's where they want to be. And so I think the casualness, but I mean, the being able to move forward and the fit, I think, is the key piece. And being in person will allow us with that as well. So I think it'll work. And I think, you know, we can do a 45-minute timeframe. Gives us a good sense, gives the ability to ask a few questions, for them to ask a few questions. If you run into the hour long, but an hour is when we would stop.
And it would give a 15-minute buffer to it.
Yep.
So I was just thinking, here's another way of looking at it. You, as the current board, have a real unique opportunity here that you don't normally have, right? When we go through our normal election process, there isn't an opportunity for an interview or selection. This is real unique, and the likelihood of the person that you appoint to go through the election and want their own terms is pretty high. So you have a really wonderful opportunity here to select your colleague that you don't normally have.
which that my brain was kind of going here, but the other is that it might be important to clearly communicate in writing that they This is only for up until the election.
Yeah, and that is, that will be in the notice.
It'll be on the posting.
It'll be
Okay,
in the posting that
okay,
goes
good,
out.
because it hit me that somebody could think, oh, I'm fulfilling that term, and no, they need to understand they would be,
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Very good point.
Okay, so I think we have an agreed upon process with a framework of a time frame. Is there anything else? And we'll put together, if we'll submit our questions to Jerry so he can get a packet together. We can work on some objective scoring, I think, with what our Board of Trustees, that piece that we might want to evaluate. And then anything else?
Well, since you have a moment of time now, you might want to talk about that criteria now. Of how you want to evaluate a letter of interest, but also how you want to evaluate the interview process. So because you have some moments now, and there may not be moments
Right.
in the time schedule for y'all to have another conversation, what do you want to see in a letter of interest or an email of interest? And it doesn't have to be a full sentence. It could be, passion for service.
I want their why, their passion for wanting to be there, and their story.
and struck me as also, what is it that you believe you bring
Yeah,
to the
I think
board?
that's part of the story piece, but yeah, that's specific,
Because that
Janine.
doesn't come out.
Yeah,
Heidi, what do you think?
I'm still thinking, it's all new. And like you said, it's really
It's like hiring someone.
quite an important decision because it potentially could be the next board member. Board, which would be really nice. Like you said, that doesn't happen, so.
Or not. I mean, the person
or
could
not, yeah,
end up not being elected,
or deciding not to run.
right?
Because I didn't have a lot of board experience before. I would like to see if they have board experience. I think and professional board experience. We learned the difference between boards and professional boards, so.
It's really okay to set your standards high. This is your opportunity.
This person has the potential of being on the board for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we're correct in our assumption
Oh.
about term limits and those sorts of
Oh,
things, this person
could be.
could serve for 10 years if they are successful in elections, so. Oh, they may not want
They
to.
may not want to, I mean,
Yeah,
but,
but not
you know,
everyone
kind
has
of like
to
that
run.
range.
But it is
The
very
potential
nice.
is there.
I mean,
The
can you
potential is
imagine? The great opportunity.
So I hope they're gonna have their badge in leadership, teamwork.
What other
Good
badges?
communication skills.
Those could be great.
Technology,
Great
because we're moving
conversation questions.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I mean, how do we get to,
Right.
that ideal person?
So I think for,
And-
at least for the posting, I think maybe not having these things in there, but having more of a request for a biographical statement and some version of your why are you interested, what is your passion?
Yeah,
And then these detailed kind of rubrics will come in on the back end of that process.
Yes, yep. And then when we all meet with those folks, while you're thinking about what you might want in the interest part, what do you want to search for at that point? Because, you'll already hear their why, passion, what value are they bringing? What else is important for you to have as a board colleague? What characteristics, what knowledge, what skills, what abilities are important for you?
I think there's certain questions we can ask regarding that. And whether we choose to put those out here, I would plan on sending Jerry 2 or 3 questions that would probably get to that
Right,
for the interview.
yes.
I think a question of, What do you think the role of the Board of Trustees is? Because
Great interview.
I think that that's really important, that they, you know, that they understand the high level, that we belong in the clouds. You know, we don't belong in the weeds. And so how do you get to that?
And as a team,
Yeah,
not individuals.
yeah. Right?
I'm thinking questions or to ask them is, I mean, we've been talking today about the Workforce Innovation Center and the future and everything. And I would like to find out how they see, if they've thought about it, where education's headed, higher education.
And what do they know about Ames? There's so much to know. Sometimes folks just want to be on a board. That's what they don't know that much about the
Exactly.
board they're on.
And yeah, I can reach back out to the board to kind of set times for closer to this, for submitting questions to me too, that we can add to this.
Yeah, I was gonna say we can submit them and then if it'd be nice for us just to look at them. I mean, we may not get through all of them, you know, during the time, but at least we have them available and it can kind of morph with the conversation.
And I'm willing to bet there will probably be a lot of overlap too when you guys are sending them to me. I bet you guys are
Agreed.
kind of on the same page of what you're looking for too.
Yeah, yep,
I do have one last scheduling question, not directly related to the appointment piece, but as far as the day 2 of the retreat and kind of getting an idea in our heads of what when that needs to happen, because we need to kind of get on scheduling that, whether it's with Cindy or finding a different facilitator. So
So before we jump on
Yeah.
that, can we also make sure with regard to both the letters of interest and the time together, primarily the letters of interest, I think, but that we have a Likert scale of 0 to 5 that folks are ranking on so that it's really objective. And the other reason for doing that is if a potential person doesn't get appointed or selected and they want to create a problem for us around that, then we need to show that we have been objective in our
Right.
process.
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, my vision of it was similar to the hiring process or the distinguished fellow process for those trustees that have been part of that, of kind of that scale
Right.
that we give
Yeah,
for
perfect.
folks to kind
That's
of
great.
to judge. So it's all numerical and on that Likert scale.
Perfect.
so Jerry, do we need a action for approving our process or is just to stay in the discussion with the recommendation to move forward?
Yep, just the discussion piece. No action is needed.
Great. Thank you.
Staff is clear on what the board would like to move
Okay.
forward. Okay.
So back to your question. Sorry, I
Yes.
wanted to do your question of the retreat.
Yeah, so as far as the retreat, and this is a question for Dr. B and the board as well of kind of back to Dr. B's question from the beginning of, do you want this person part of that? Or are you okay with them not being part of that? And because that's gonna play a role in this timing as well. If this person's being appointed on the 7th, we still have the whole month of July that we could still do it. They just may not be available.
That's right.
So I think that it's something for the board to discuss what your desires are for that.
I
The
think,
next,
don't know who that is. We have to go ahead and set it and then hope that they might be able to.
Yeah.
But not have it be on the 8th,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
But the 9th is open.
and technically, we have until the 13th of August because that's the next board meeting.
Oh, it's not the
Right.
first.
That's correct.
Oh, 13th,
Oh,
that's
that's
right.
Second Wednesday.
Second Wednesday, it's the 13th.
Yeah, so we've got some time between there.
Well, and in all, in all honesty, not that I'm never honest, but it doesn't have to happen before the August board meeting, your
Right.
retreat. You can have your
Right.
retreat anytime. It just seemed to makes sense to kind of wrap up
Right. the
this
year.
last year before you start your next year, which
Sure.
is August, so you can really do that anytime. It's just probably better before the 13th.
And I would say, just to clarify what we touched on at the beginning of the process, at least based on what I received from Cindy today, her availability, if you want her in particular, is not in July until the first 2 weeks of August. So the August 4th through the 8th. I'll go back to her email here just to,
Or the 11th through the,
yeah, the 11th or 12th, pretty much. So let me go back to her email just to make sure. Yeah, she says the week of August 4th available any day, and then the week of August 11th, Monday through Thursday, not available the 15th. So she's available anytime during that chunk. I know
Why don't we see who can be available during that first week, Jerry? And that's not pushing us up to the same week as our board meeting.
And I mean, if you wanted to do it, I mean, it could still be done prior also, to kind of what you were saying before. Prior to the 13th, it could be done on Monday, the 11th or Tuesday, the 12th, and just kind of have 2 days of, do the retreat and then do the meeting and kind of move
My-
on.
My vote would be the week before, just because of school, work schedules, but
I could do
You
Friday.
know what, Marilyn, I like it too, because I'm thinking if I was a new kind of board member to meet everyone in a small room, through the retreat, and then the next week meet with the board meeting, at least I would, number one, remember people's names, remember who they're like
yeah.
quickly versus waiting another month till I see them again. That's just my thought.
So I'll go back to my comment. If it would work, or if we could make it work, and again, we need to check with Jean. If we could do it the week of the 4th, sometime in there, and we can send you our availability, and it would work for Cindy, maybe that might be a great week to do it.
Yeah, I'll definitely reach out to Gene as soon as we're done here, just to see, because that's if he can't make it, then, we'll have to find a different time, so.
Yeah. Well, you're the master of that, so we're gonna leave that to you.
Thank you.
You seem to get things to align, so.
I'll see if I can work my magic.
Do you use Doodle poll?
We can, yeah, I mean, with 4 folks, it's
Right.
usually.
It's easy, you
it's
don't
easier
have
just
to.
Yeah, if it were more folks, then it would be.
Yeah.
Just writing that note down.
I just know it's like herding cats sometimes.
The summer's hard too.
Yeah.
Anything else you need?
I don't think so. How about anyone else? Do you have any?
No, I think we can.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're gonna miss John, but I think we have a good process to bring a new board member on as well. So, are there any other items? If not, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
Sure.
It's not an item, but I'll just make a comment. I'll work with Zach on how to message out once a member is appointed, and how we want to message that out to the larger, to the internal community as well as to the external community. So this gives us time and Zach time to think about it. And I know he's on Zoom listening to all this, so.
Yep, I got it.
And I'll also work with Zach and Zach's team on getting everything published for the notice and everything else, and getting things out to the paper and other things that we need to do as well. So.
Nice.
Thanks, Marilyn.
Okay. Do you need we need to adjourn, don't we, Jerry?
Correct. Either you can do it unilaterally or ask for a motion, whatever you choose.
Then we will just adjourn the meeting.